A major component of ancient Judaism was bloodline, direct blood descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And throughout their history, the Jews so trusted in their bloodline as the basis for relationship with God that they believed they could live in total rebellion to God, and God was obligated to receive them as his children simply because they were the direct blood descendants of Abraham. Now, there was always within them a righteous remnant of faithful followers of God. But the vast majority of them, throughout their entire history, the vast majority were completely apostate. Now, when Jesus appears on the scene as their promised Messiah, in fulfillment of all that was written in the law and the prophets, the Jewish leadership was at the epitome of apostasy. They were absolutely, totally corrupt. And Jesus called them a perverse generation. And much of what he taught had to do with their apostasy and their rejection of him as their promised Messiah, as their king, as their God. Now, many of his parables and much of his teaching dealt specifically with the kingdom being removed from these apostate imposters. He was bringing the long-promised, long-anticipated salvation to the righteous remnant. And simultaneously, he was bringing judgment and destruction to the apostates. Jesus contended that bloodline does not equal relationship with God. And this is one of the main reasons they hated him, and frankly, this is why they killed him. Those who were the blood descendants of Abraham, for the most part, did not recognize or receive Jesus as their promised Messiah. Now, certainly, some did. And these who did receive him, they were the righteous remnant. And as many as did receive him as their promised Messiah, they were given by God the right to become children or sons of God. Now, we're in a study of the parables, and as I have said in previous segments, the parables of Jesus are primarily focused on the subject of the kingdom, his kingdom, the messianic kingdom, the long prophesied kingdom that was spoken of in the law and the prophets of the Old Testament. Now, these parables are apocalyptic and they are eschatological. These video studies are numbered, and if this is your first time to join me, I really would encourage you to go back and watch the previous segments. Each one is only about 10 minutes, and they build one upon the other. Now, my challenge to you is that you actually study the scriptures and see what the scriptures actually say. Now, unfortunately, we all tend to look at the scriptures through some interpretive filter, and that filter has been shaped by our personal history, our life experience, our church history, our theological perspective. And so we tend to only listen to and read from interpretations that we agree with, and we immediately shut down or we have walls go up when we hear something that might be outside of our accepted perspective. Now, in our last few segments, we've looked at actual text from the scripture that says just the opposite of the predominant view among American evangelical Christians. So we are confronted with a choice. We either resolve that we're going to investigate further what the scriptures actually say, or we do exactly what the first century Jews did, and we close our eyes to the truth because our definition of the kingdom is different than God's definition of the kingdom, and that's exactly what those first century Jews did. Now, in our last segment, we looked at what Jesus said in his explanation of the parable of the wheat and the tares, and we're going to pick it up once again in verse 38, Matthew chapter 13, verse 38. Jesus says this, "The field is the world, and as for the good seed, these are the sons of the kingdom, and the tares are the sons of the evil one. And the enemy who sowed them is the devil, and the harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are angels," or another word is messengers. So just as the tares are gathered up and burned with fire, so it will be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send forth his angels, or his messengers, and they will gather out of his kingdom all stumbling blocks and those who commit lawlessness. And he will throw them into the furnace of fire. In that place there'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. He who has ears, let him hear. Now, this parable is contrasting the righteous remnant of the Jews, the sons of the kingdom, with the sons of the evil one, the apostate, rebellious Jews, and primarily made up of the Jewish leadership at that time. The righteous remnant are the wheat, and the tares are the apostates. One of the most fascinating interactions between Jesus and the Jewish leadership is found in John chapter 8. And frankly, John chapter 8 is probably my favorite chapter in the entire New Testament. We'll pick it up at verse 37. Now, I hope you'll go back and read the entire chapter and really take it apart. But I want to focus in on this specific section. Verse 37, Jesus says to these Jewish leaders, I know that you are Abraham's descendants. You're the bloodline. Yet you seek to kill me because my word has no place in you. Now I speak the things which I have seen with my Father, therefore you also do the things which you heard from your father. Now, essentially, Jesus is saying to him, we have different fathers. And they answered and said to him, Abraham is our father. And Jesus said to them, if you are Abraham's children, then do the deeds of Abraham. But as it is, you're seeking to kill me, a man who has told you the truth, which I heard from God. This Abraham did not do. You are doing the deeds of your father. And they said to him, we were not born of fornication. We have one Father. Our Father is God. And Jesus said to them, if God were your Father, you would love me. For I proceeded forth and have come from God. For I have not even come on my own initiative, but he sent me. Why do you not understand what I'm saying? It's because you cannot hear my word. Now look at this, verse 44. You are of your father, the devil, and you want to do the desires of your father. He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in the truth because there is no truth in him. And whenever he speaks a lie, he speaks from his own nature, for he is a liar and the father of lies. Now, don't gloss over this passage. Jesus tells the apostate first century Jewish leadership that they may be the blood descendants of Abraham, but they are the children of the devil. They are the tares. Now notice also that the defining characteristic between the righteous remnant of Israel and the apostates is whether or not they recognize Jesus as the promised Messiah. Look again at what he says here in verse 42. If God were your Father, you would love me, for I proceeded forth and have come from God, for I have not even come on my own initiative, but he sent me. We'll conclude today's study with the last few verses of John chapter 8, and look specifically, pay attention to these words. Verse 56, your father Abraham rejoiced to see my day, and he saw it and was glad. And the Jews said to him, you're not even yet 50 years old, and you have seen Abraham? And Jesus said to them, truly, truly, I say to you, before Abraham was born, I am. And Therefore they picked up stones to throw at him. But Jesus hid himself and went out of the temple. I am. Jesus identifies himself as the voice from the burning bush that spoke to Moses. They went absolutely nuts. They simply could not accept this. I can't emphasize this point enough. The presence of Jesus, the presence of Messiah, was the end of the Judaistic system. It was the end of the temple system. It was the end of physical bloodline having any bearing on standing before God. This is why the first century Jewish leadership hated Jesus and had him killed. And it's why the Jewish followers of Jesus were hated and persecuted by the Jewish rejectors of Jesus. Well, I want to thank you for joining me today. I hope you'll be with me again. We'll be here right here tomorrow morning as we continue our study of the parable of the wheat and the tares and look further into what Jesus had to say about the kingdom. Why not click on the subscribe button on the lower right corner of your screen, and you'll be notified in YouTube whenever a new video gets posted. And if you're watching on Facebook, consider sharing this on your wall and invite friends to watch it. Hey, I hope you'll go out and make today a great day. God bless you.